guys, Adam Ronin here. This is part 2 of our R-rated toy video. You saw the first one, you liked it, here's the second one. So let's sit down, grab your popcorn, and let's take a look at a few more toys from the 80s and 90s that were rated R and we shouldn't have been playing with, but we did! In 1987, we got the over-the-top cyberpunk action thriller Robocop that introduced us to police officer Alex Murphy as he was viciously gunned down by the quintessential 80s villains and turned into the cybernetic hero that we know today. This was followed up shortly thereafter by Robocop and the Ultra Police, a wonderful fun little toy line that we got to reenact all of our violent Robocop fantasies. And another little fun fact is in 1988, just a year later, they came out with a 12-episode series called Robocop, the animated series. That didn't do too well. Nonetheless, the toy lines were fun, they were well put together, and we had a good time with them. Moving on to something a little bit more toxic.
It's Toxie, the trendy yet hideously deformed leader of the Toxic Crusaders.
Straight from the vault of Trauma Entertainment, who's known for producing low-budget B-movies with campy concepts and gruesome violence, was 1984's The Toxic Avenger, which is a superhero horror comedy. It was not only hilarious, bloody, and just an outlandish fun, it gave Batman and Superman a run for their money with kids in the 80s. But it wasn't until 1991 when they thought it would be a great idea to turn this into a kids' cartoon called The Toxic Crusaders, accompanied by a fantastic, slimy little toy line that looked like something right out of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I told you I'd be back.
Hey look, there's a theme with the 80s and 90s. Arnold Schwarzenegger again is back with Conan the Barbarian from 1982 that starred Arnold Schwarzenegger and Darth Vader himself, James Earl Jones. Things were quiet on the Conan front until 1993 when Fox released Conan the Adventurer, a cartoon that ran for an impressive 65 episodes accompanied by its own toy line. Admittedly, this isn't something I personally played with and got into, but it was very popular among my peers. If you grew up in the 80s and you were a horror movie fan, chances are a lot of it started in 1984 with A Nightmare on Elm Street from the legendary master of horror, Wes Craven. Now, of course, everybody knows that in the 90s, horror icons like Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger's got the action figure treatment from Todd McFarlane in the movie Maniacs line, but if we go back a little further, back to the 80s, we can find a couple pieces of obscure merchandise that were near and dear to my childhood heart. First up comes from a toy in 1989 from Matchbox Toys. That's right, the same ones that did your favorite little cars. Nothing like an 18-inch talking Freddy Krueger doll to keep your kids awake at night. Next up is another item from Matchbox around the same time frame as the talking Freddy Krueger doll. This was the Max Effects Freddy Krueger doll, in which was supposed to cater to the special effects side of filmmaking. This was a 12-inch action figure of just a generic male that you were able to transform into Freddy Krueger by means of a mask and other types of clothing. Now this, plus the 18-inch talking Freddy Krueger doll, flew off of the shelves naturally as kids were enamored with the subject, whereas there was a giant outcry from parents, as Freddy Krueger was a child murderer and they did not want their kids playing with such a thing. As a result of the outcry, the Max Effects line was canceled before they were able to produce any of the other dolls, which included the Xenomorph from Alien and Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th. My horror-obsessed childhood heart was shattered.
Get away from her, you bitch!
Guys, thanks for watching our toy videos. You had part 1, which you can see right here. This was part 2, where we talked about our favorite R-rated toys from the 80s and 90s. By all means, if you want to see more videos like this, please check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/R24. Your support helps us grow and do the things that we want to do that you want us to do. And as always, subscribe, hit me up on Twitter, and take it from Spawn! Toys were better in the 80s and 90s. These were the 90s. Rah, Spawn! Aliens! Spawn! Aliens! Meh!